Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Bulletproof Selling. My name is Sean Rhodes. I am the Chief Sales Architect here at Bulletproof Selling, and here we are all about why hope is not a sales strategy. We get to share that message with other experts, leaders, authors, and even people on the front lines of sales. And so today I'm very excited about our guest. We've got somebody who's kind of fulfilled all of those roles. Not only is he a best-selling author of The Transparency Sale, he's also into the science of sales, which is exactly where I'm at too. So I know we're going to have a lot of fun talking. It's going to be a short intro because, man, I want to give Todd all the airtime that I can. We're going to have a great little conversation here. I'm going to be taking notes, okay? The dude who is all about bulletproof selling is going to be taking notes today about things that I can do differently in my sales process. That's why I'm so excited to have Todd on. So, Todd, for the small percentage of people on the planet that don't know who you are, that haven't read The Transparency Sale, talk to us a little bit about yourself, where you came from, and then let's dive into the science of sales.
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it. I think the thing that makes me unique is I've been in sales leadership for quite a while, CRO of a couple of fast-growing tech companies here in Chicago. I was part of the sales leadership team at ExactTarget through our IPO, and then we sold the business to Salesforce for around $3 billion back in 2013. So I've had a pretty good run, but I know we're about to get nerdy on something that happened, which was a research study that when I read it, it changed my life. I quit my job and I wrote a book. So we can dig into that. But way back, I was kind of like a B minus sales rep, but I always knew that leadership and coaching was my direction. Went in that direction, and then here we are, just spouting nonsense about behavioral science and sales all day long.
And so let's talk about the science of sales. Mm-hmm. All right. So I'm a firm believer in it. And I also know a lot of great sales leaders, authors, speakers, and salespeople that are all about the art of sales. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I know it's a science and an art. Where do you feel like science fits into this, though? Because a lot of salespeople, especially the ones that have decades in the industry, they're like, well, I could never put a process behind what I do. I just go in there and play jazz. I've got enough experience to be able to make it happen. Well, why do you advocate for the science of sales, maybe 51% more than the art of sales?
Well, can I start with this book that I'm holding for anybody who can see it? This is copyright 1916. I wish you could smell it because I'm a sales historian on the side. But the title is The Art and Science of Selling. So ironically, we've been talking about this subject for 100+ years. And so from a science perspective, I'll dig into the story of that research study, because that really triggered me. I've always been interested in the science of, if we could read the minds of buyers, would that help us sell? Well, of course.
Just a little bit.
Right. But like even more important, if we could understand truly what is happening in the buyer's brain that triggers their engagement, their prioritization, a decision, and a buying actual activity, would that be helpful? Of course it would. And so that's where I fall on the science spectrum, and always have. Of neuroscientists have pinpointed, for the most part, like what triggers those types of things. And I've always thought, hey, that's an advantage. And then being the nerd that I am, I just think it's cool. So I've always pulled those two things in together to get to this point. And I'll share the research study for you, because I think that'll kind of trigger the rest of this conversation. But I was the chief revenue officer of Chicago's Power Reviews. And you could probably guess by the name, we were in the industry of helping retailers and brands collect and display ratings and reviews on their websites, right? So you're buying a pair of Crocs on crocs.com. You look at the shoes, you scroll down, there's reviews. That was us helping with the collect and display. So we had an awesome CMO who engaged with Northwestern University here in Chicago to just look at, hey, what happens when a consumer is shopping online and a website is acting as the salesperson? Right? So Crocs or Vineyard Vines or Jet or like any of those retailers. They found 3 things, 2 of which, like I said, changed my life. The first thing that didn't is that we're all looking at reviews today, right? So when a website's acting as the salesperson, 96% of us go and read the reviews. And I haven't found the 4% that don't yet. So if you know anybody,
they're somewhere out there.
Yeah, exactly. There's somebody that says no freaking way to reviews. But the 2 things that changed my life. Number one, 85% of us go to the negative reviews first.
Ah,
So you scroll and you look and you're like, I don't need to really read the 5 stars. I want to see what could go wrong. Like I'm trying to
right,
predict. So I'm
right.
going to read the 4s, 3s, 2s, and 1s first and get that kind of risk. What could go wrong? Why don't people like it? And that the second or that third data point, the second one that changed my life was that when a product, again, when a website's acting as a salesperson, has an average review score between a 4.2 and a 4.5, that is optimal for purchase conversion. Meaning a product that has negative reviews will sell at a higher rate than a product that has no negative reviews.
Interesting.
And so I looked at that and thought, all right, that's when a website's acting as a salesperson.
Right. What about a salesperson getting involved now?
Exactly. Like I wanted to go, like I went right to the neuroscience and I was just like, all right, what's going on here? Why do we do this? Would this work in B2B, human to human selling? And I found just piles of evidence that says, yeah, like that's how we're wired. We're trying, ultimately, we're trying to predict our experience. And we know at a subconscious level that perfection isn't a thing and that there is a squeeze to every drop of juice that we need to make, right? And so we're trying to figure out that is the juice worth the squeeze? But if we don't know what the squeeze is, we'll never be able to process the taste and the nutrition and the value of the juice, right? And so all of that happens. It's all fresh in my mind. And then I went and tried it. And the first time I had the opportunity to try it, like literally magic happened. It was so crazy, like a 6-month sales cycle. They made a decision in 10 days, threw out their RFP, didn't have us fly to New York to share. The guy literally showed me his budget in the first meeting, which nobody had ever done in my history of selling. And I was like, what just happened? Like, this is crazy. And then, so that's when it kind of snowballed into where we are today. But ultimately, transparency sells better than perfection. And due to the proliferation of reviews and feedback and everything we do buy and experience now, we got to do it anyway. So that's really where I landed and how I ended up with the book and what I spend a lot of time talking about today.
So we can either be honest at the outset and say, well, here are the failure points. Here's where people don't get optimal results. Here, of course, are some ways that we try to mitigate against that. But, here are the ways that this car could go off the road if we don't work together, in a partnership through the length of the use of this product or service. I love that. And so talk to me a little bit about where do you feel like salespeople hope a little too much that things are going to work? Because obviously, and I know we're going to dive into it because, you know me, I'm the systems guy. It's all about pipeline management. We're going to build something today that salespeople can use no matter the size of their goals or the size of their team around transparency. So it's going to be really fun. But before we get there, I want to know where you find salespeople are just kind of winging it in this area, where they just show up and they hope that, people will ask the right questions or that they'll remember to be transparent. Because I know that you've got a system behind how you do, like that 10-day sales cycle you had. I know you wanted to replicate that as soon as possible across all your other prospects. So where do you see salespeople out there in the world? Because you get to talk to a lot of them like I do. Where are they hoping just a little too much that they remember to use this stuff?
You know what? I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear.
I lost my audio, so I have no output coming out at all right now, which is really weird. So I'm not even sure what you just asked.
Okay, I'm happy to do it again.
Crazy. I don't know what you want to do here, but I don't know why the audio just kicked out on me.
All right. Well, can you hear me? Thumbs up or thumbs down?
All right, cool. Let me. I'm gonna do a quick and just make sure we're good.
For those of you that are wondering if this is live,
that is so weird. Live. All right, so I'm going to answer a question that I couldn't hear. So seriously, if you want to put it in the chat. Here's the thing. Transparency, like when I talk about transparency sells better than perfection, salespeople are afraid of that. And here's why. There's a couple of things. First of all, as a sales leader, one of the things that I know that I did wrong, and I did wrong all the time, is I would measure the wrong things. Meaning, one of the things that I was emphatic about is that salespeople, they needed to have 4x their quota in pipeline at any time, right? Like, hey, you know what? We're only going to close 25% of our deals. So I'm measuring to, do you have enough pipeline to make sure that we're going to be able to close enough on the back end? Guess what that does? Reps fill their pipeline with 4x their quota of crap, right? So like that misses the point around how do we do a better job of qualifying in or out faster? Like in today's world, I would want to be spending more time with my reps and make sure that they're working on the deals that we should win. And part of this idea around embracing transparency is, obviously the results that I saw pretty quickly were it speeds sales cycles and increases win rates. But the reason it increases win rates is because we qualify deals in faster that we should win. But more importantly, if we're going to lose, we lose a lot faster too. And so if we're able to do that, I would want to be measuring to my reps of, hey, when we lose a deal, what can we learn from that? But even more importantly, how long from the time we thought we could lose this deal to when we actually lost this deal was there? Like, let's look at that little time thing and see, is there a way that we can accelerate that and get better so that we're spending our time on the deals that we should be winning? And instead of the 4x of your quote or your pipeline and quota at any time, I would love for it to be as close to 1x as it can, and we close all of it. But obviously, I know that's not going to happen. Right. But 4x, I think, is an old school metric. So the bottom line to your question is, I believe that managers a lot of times are the purpose and the reason that we don't embrace transparency, because oftentimes we're measuring the wrong things.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I still can't hear you, though. I have no audio coming through at all.
We'll roll through the chat. So I'm just going to drop the next question via chat. We'll see what happens.
All right. So where are salespeople hoping they remember to use transparency? So on that one, there's a couple of things. So first of all, when we lead, again, when I talk about the fact that you can't hide your flaws and expect to get away with them. One of the examples I talk about a lot is IKEA, right? And I know it's a B2C, but IKEA never tries to pretend that there's something they're not, because the experience is horrible, right? Like, you go there, you can't find anything. When you do, you got to take a picture of the tag, because you get to go down to the warehouse yourself, pull 200-pound boxes off of a shelf onto a cart that doesn't have brakes, roll it into the parking lot, jam it into the back of your car Tetris style, drive it home with an injury or two as a souvenir, open the box, there's 150 parts, and there's no no words in the instructions. So you swear and F-bomb your way through that whole process. And when you're done, you're like, wow, that actually looks pretty good. I should have bought the end tables with this bedroom furniture, right? IKEA does not pretend to feng shui. They don't pretend they're going to deliver this assembled. They don't even pretend it's the highest quality. They tell the world, hey, listen, we're going to give up the find, pick, pack, jam, assemble, so that we can give you modern Scandinavian design furniture that you didn't pay much for. And when they do that, guess what? IKEA has been the #1 furniture retailer in the world for 13 straight years. I think in all of our businesses on a B2B level, we just need to sit back and go, all right, what is our modern Scandinavian design furniture that you're not going to pay? Like, what is our core, and what are we giving up to be great at that core? And when we do that, and when we do that correctly, that's when we endear customers to us, and they're able to predict. And like I said, they're able to make better decisions, which means they not only buy, they buy faster, they stay, and they're more likely to advocate on our behalf.
Love it, love it. And so we'll try to fix the audio issue here. If you,
I'm gonna do a bounce here, and let's see if we can pop.
Yep. That's the beauty of live TV, live streams, is that, you got to roll with the technology situation. So one of the reasons that I really, really love talking to people that enjoy the science of sales is that they do get it, that, hey, we are here and we're trying to get better every single day. So are we any better now, Todd?
We are perfect.
All right, love it.
Fixed it. It's I don't know if anybody has kids, but like my kids love Peppa Pig. And so I don't remember Peppa Pig, but there's something called Daddy Pigging it, which means like they always think that Daddy Pig can fix anything. Sure. And basically Daddy's always like, I don't know. And then all he does is turn it off and turn it back on again, and it fixes it. And they're like, see, Daddy, you're the greatest. So we just Daddy Pigged this thing, and it's working.
Daddy Pigged it, man. I love it. I love it. So let's talk about putting this into practice then. So when you figured out that you could shorten your sales cycle from many months down to 10 days, you closed that sale. If you're a believer in the science of selling, it means that you took a look at that sale and you were like, wow, what did we do differently? Because we began applying all of this neuroscience, all of this research, and it got us great results. So I know that you didn't hope that, you just remembered to do all of those things at your next sale. So how did you begin codifying this neuroscience? Because it obviously changed the way that you interacted with your prospects during the sales cycle. How did you begin codifying that so that you could begin replicating it across future sales?
Well, I don't know if you noticed this, but like you would put a post on LinkedIn this morning, just kind of announcing that we were going to do this. And I put on it like, hey, I'm ear deep in some neuroscience right now.
Right now.
Here's the thing that I've been studying this morning and that I'm getting ready to, I'm like really digging in, getting nerdy. And when I do, I try to pull out so that like, even my wife could read it and understand it. It really comes down to empathy and expectations. All right. So the first thing is empathy. Empathy, if you do a Google search and just write empathy in sales, there's like a million articles talking about it, talking about how important it is. Nobody explains what empathy actually is. And 98% of people get it wrong. And they're confusing empathy with sympathy. All right. So like sympathy is, Sean, I hope that things are going great for you in these trying times. And like, I care about you and I care about your emotions. Empathy is truly being able to get into the shoes of the person that you're selling to and understand their world, their challenges, their distractions, what their inbox looks like, what their like, how many times they get called, what their challenge, what their Bennett MBOs are, how they get paid, like all of that stuff. Like that is empathy, right? And until we get to that point, it's hard to do much of anything. And so my advice to people in that regard is, if you're selling to marketing, go find your CMO and your marketing team and just go on a regular basis, go sit down with them and go, hey, like, let me look at your inbox. What are you working on? What are you reading? How are you guys paid? Like, get the true empathy. Selling to finance, do the same thing. Selling to product, doing the same thing. You got to get to that level. And then when you go into these engagements, you got to get to that empathetic level of, I'm on the same, like, I'm trying to help you make a good decision. And now I truly understand what your challenges are so that I can be empathetic and help you make a good decision quickly. That example.
So what three things would you say to a salesperson? If I'm walking in, I've got a sales meeting here in 20 minutes, Todd. You got, a very short amount of time to teach me how to do this. What three things do I need to be able to do to either understand or elicit this empathy situation in my next sale?
Well, I'll tell you, first of all, just imagine what it's like to be a buyer. A buyer, according to Gartner, in a consensus purchase, they spend only 39% of their time talking to you, talking to your competitor, or talking to their internal buying group. 61% is spent doing homework because they know you're going to come at them with 5-0 speak, right? So they're going to back channel you to analysts, to peers. They're going to do Google searches. They're going to even look at like Glassdoor and those guys to understand what it's like. Do most people in your company hate working there? Because I'm not just buying your products or services, I'm buying your people, right? So the first thing I would do is go do a Google search and just act like you're on the buying end. I mean, that's something we can all do before we go talk to our internal departments and go, what am I going to find when I do the research? Like that's number one. Number two, and the thing that really drove that 10-day from 6-month cycle was a client that I was going into that it was kind of an accident. I was in New York at the same time an inbound lead came in for a big retailer. And I told my VP of sales, I was the chief revenue officer. I told my VP of sales, like, hey, see if they want to just grab coffee. Like, I think that would be, I'm here in New York. I've got a couple hours open. I know it's a 1 in 100 shot. And they tried, and the head of e-commerce from the retailer was like, yeah, have them come on by. So nice. I went by, I got in there, and I don't know who misset expectations, but as soon as I walked in, they handed me an HDMI cable, and they were like, here, you can plug in for your presentation. And I was like, where's the coffee machine? Like, I thought we had a cup. And then people were rolling their chairs into the office, 7 of them. So I'm in a Manhattan office. There's 9 of us jammed into this hot office. And this head of e-commerce was like New York in the best way possible, meaning there was no small talk. He just came right at me and was like, Todd, I'm looking at your competitor. I'm looking at you. How are you better? And I look around and everybody's got their arms up like, all right, here comes the sales pitch. And I just, that second piece of advice to your question was, I wanted to imagine what it was like in their shoes, right? They're looking at our competitor. do I want the competitor's value to come from the competitor or from me? Do I want to control that message or not? And there was something that exacerbated that, in that our competitor had just released something, a new add-on, that not only did we not have, but it wasn't on our roadmap, and their first customer was a competitor of this company. Right? So like, I just decided to start with, hey, before we get too deep into this, like, you've got 8 people in here, like I didn't say this, but like the salary cash register is running while you're spending time in here. Before I get too deep into this, I don't know if you saw, but our competitor just released something that not only do we not have, but it's not on our roadmap. And if that's going to be a big requirement in this process, because I know you just kicked it off this morning, can we vet that out now? Because like, you don't want to spend a ton of time. I don't want to be flying my people over, and like, RFPs suck. Like, I don't want to be, and they're all like, you could feel the whole room kind of disarm, and they're like, what is it? And I pitched it like I was the competitor. Not that, oh, it sucks, or not, it's brand new, it's got bugs. I was just like, hey, listen, this is the promise of this solution. And their first customer is Gap. And so like, you're another company like Gap. Gap apparently loved it. They just released it this morning, and it wasn't on a roadmap. And it probably won't be, because like IKEA, right? We give this up to be great at our core. They got into a big discussion. Like, I was not a vendor to a team. It was like we were all on the same team. And like, I was asking them questions about it. Like, what do you think about it? I was learning from it, but they came to this conclusion of, no, it's not going to be important. Even if it was, you could probably plug into something like that too. And I was like, I don't know. I just heard about it. Right. Like, we were like buddies talking and trying to make a good decision.
So the first thing you said was do the research. So how is someone going to see your brand if they go researching you before the meeting?
Exactly.
Second thing, get into the buyer's shoes, find out, what is it like to be in their world? What things are they concerned about? And what was number 3?
Yeah. Number 3 is, in my opinion, this is kind of another crazy topic, but I've discovered recently that setting proper expectations is better than either under promise and over deliver, or even obviously under promise and over deliver. Those two, I mean, I know that sounds counterintuitive to say under promise and over deliver is a bad idea, but I've come to the conclusion that setting accurate expectations and meeting them consistently creates customers who stay, advocate, and buy more. And so here's the thing. If you're going to go into these engagements with customers, your goal is to set accurate expectations that you will consistently meet. And what I mean by that, in a couple of instances, first of all, a few weeks ago, my wife and I, we were running errands, and with my kids. They were 8 and 9 at the time. One just had a birthday, so she's 10 now. We are going out, and all of a sudden, my wife was like, hey, should we get some ice cream? And my kids in the back seat are just like, like hawk, ice cream?
Yeah.
Yes. And so we're like, I guess we're going to get ice cream. We go here in the Chicago area, there's a place called Culver's. Culver's has got fantastic, what's called frozen custard. So they're like, let's go to Culver's. And so we get ready, we drive over to Culver's. We get into the parking lot, and we see that there's 15 cars in the drive-through line. And we see a bunch of people on the other side by the pickup window with little stickers on their like rear view mirrors waiting for their food. And we're just like, oh, this blows. But we didn't say anything. We're like, hey, the kids want the ice cream. The ice cream's the reward. We get into line. We sit there for about 2 minutes. My 9-year-old daughter is like, hey, can we just go home?
Like, she was done.
What? Really? And my 8-year-old's like, hey, I want to go home. Like, I just want to play Minecraft. I don't need the ice cream that bad. And I'm like, really? Now, my nerd brain went into, wait a second, the ice cream, the reward would just be as sweet. It would be as sweet if we waited in line versus if we just went home right now. Like, or if there was no line, we would have just gotten it and everybody would have been happy. What happened? It was a miss in expectations. Oftentimes sales reps look and go, gosh, the customer chose for the status quo. What's wrong with them? Like, gosh, they just wasted a bunch of my time. I'd argue it's not them, it's you, right? That they got into line, they saw there was 15 cars, and they chose the status quo over the fantastic frozen custard.
So there's easier ways to go. Yeah. So this is actually a brilliant thing to build a system around. All right. So when we build this, which is setting and over delivering on expectations, right? Because if you'd have gotten into the line at Culver's, they'd have made the process even smoother than you were used to. They got you your ice cream earlier, maybe even threw in some fries. They'd been like, wow, that was a great experience. We're definitely coming back here again. So let's talk about how to recreate that for salespeople. So when we talk about creating these types of pipeline accelerants, if you will, these systems within the sales process, it's about trimming hope away from our sales strategy. So we just use this acronym TRIM, T-R-I-M. So let's talk about, because think about expectations. There could be hundreds of expectations set, and we have to deliver on throughout the sales cycle, from responding promptly to emails or inbound inquiries to delivering that thing that the prospect asked for, to getting the proposal out on time. I mean, this could go hundreds of items literally in any given sale. So let's talk about the trigger for this, because I want to make sure that as a salesperson or as a sales leader, if I'm managing salespeople, that I understand how to set and over deliver on expectations so that we don't end up in line at Culver's and that type of thing happens again. So let's talk about the trigger on this. What is the triggering event on an expectation so that we can begin tracking it to make sure that we over deliver on it, so that we don't just hope we remember to send the client or the prospect that thing that they asked for? Is it every time we make a promise or every time the client requests something? What would you say is the thing that really sends up the flag to say, oh, we have to deliver on this?
Well, I think it all starts up front, right? It's about setting expectations up front that, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, here's what we give up to be great at our core. Here's an idea of what this pricing is going to look like. And are we in range? Like, before we get too deep into this, if I'm talking about a 4-figure solution to somebody who's a 7-figure buyer, one of us is in the wrong discussion, and vice versa. Right. If I'm selling a 7-figure solution and they're expecting a 4-figure, one of us is in the wrong conversation. We got to vet those things out first. And then the next thing is to set the expectation as what the process is going to look like. We often forget that consensus selling's hard, right? Like, we talk about, oh, it's so hard. Consensus buying is harder, right? Because these buyers have never bought your solution before, or if they have, maybe they did it 5 years ago. They've never, they don't have processes behind them like you as the salesperson do. You got a whole marketing team that's giving you tools. You've got a whole sales leadership team that's optimizing. You got an operations team helping you with your processes. Your buyers, they don't got crap, and they don't even know where to go, right? So when they get in line, they have no idea what to expect. So from the beginning, that's why I love mutual decision plans, not in the frame of I'm going to hold you to a process, but so you don't end up like a dog chasing a car bumper down the street and you don't know where the car's going, right? We've got to set the proper expectations and go, hey, listen, we work with a lot of companies like yours. Here's the steps we often see. Is that what you expect? Here's some of the things that you might see along the way, right? When
outline that sales process ahead of time. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. I got that. So the trigger being immediately when you're in a conversation, start setting expectations.
Exactly.
Because we found that this point, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say that, a fast line is not always what we're looking for. There's a taco place down the street here where there's always 10 people in line. And you're damn sure I go wait in line if it's 10. But if I show up and it's 30 that day, I might go get something else, right? So it's about setting and being accurate with those expectations. Now, the other piece of that is, I mentioned earlier that under promise and over deliver is actually a bad thing. I think it is. I know that's so counterintuitive, but under promise and over deliver will create a short-term satisfaction spike. But if you are consistently under promise and over deliver, you create something I like to call expectation inflation, which means you're lying.
I always expect you to go higher and above. Yeah,
exactly. You're going to have to keep going higher and you will not be able to keep up. So it's just always about be as accurate as possible. We'll wait in line for the roller coaster at the amusement park for 45 minutes because that's our expectation.
Right.
Again, it's about setting it. And when it appears and it's consistent with what my expectations are, I've had a good day at the amusement park.
Yeah. And so if we have this trigger, set expectations early, outline the process, make sure everybody's in agreement on that. The next part of this TRIM acronym is R, which is making it repeatable. And so I don't just want to hope that I remember to do this with a prospect that I'm going to talk to a week from now or a month from now. I mean, if I happen to end up in an organic conversation because somebody decided to pick up the phone and call me that day, I want to make sure I continue to do this, to use this exact system that we're building. So how would you advise, if you're coaching a sales team, how would you tell them to make sure that this is a repeatable thing, right? Does that look like a checklist? Is it something in their CRM? Is it scripting practice? How do you make sure that a sales team uses this flow?
Yeah, well, it starts with the wisdom of a supermodel. I know that sounds weird, but Tyra Banks coined the term flawsome. And flawsome means to embrace your flaws, but know that you're still awesome. And what I mean by that is, first of all, I don't want to give the impression that salespeople, through transparency, should show up in their next sales engagement with, hey, this is why we suck. Like, take it easy, right? The 4.2 to 4.5 is really, really important. And so your question about how do you make it repeatable really starts with, this has got to be a team effort within your organization. Like your marketing team, the ones that help you with your messaging, they should be out curating, like, what are you going to find? What's a buyer going to find when they're doing their research? What are the competitors doing that we're not, that might be attributable to this type of customer that we're talking to, right? And helping you with that preparation, that if I'm selling to aerospace companies, that there's a competitor that's got an aerospace specific thing, I better know about that. And again, would it be better for that messaging to come from me or them? Right? So that we can lead with those types of things. So transparency, just in general, obviously builds trust, right? It's an authentic way to just go, hey, Sean, here's what I'm good at, but here's what I'm not so good at, right? Like that's something that we can all do. But from a sales and a business perspective, it really is a team effort to just make sure that you've got the tools and resources to hit that flawsome messaging. And then just know that as a part of your process, when you lead with it, again, sales cycles speed up, win rates go up, we qualify deals in faster, and we qualify deals out faster that we're going to lose. And then in that kind of wrap up that story about that company in New York, when that e-commerce company made the decision, 10 days in, they didn't call my rep, they didn't call anybody. That head of e-commerce called me. I was actually in a meeting. I look at the caller ID, I see it's the company name, and I'm like, why are they calling? Pick up, it's him. And he just wanted to tell me, like, Todd, we've kind of shut off this whole evaluation because we just felt comfortable with you. Like, we're going to go with you. But I just wanted to share this funny story. We told your competitor that we're going with you. And they immediately went into a pitch on their new add-on and how Gap was
that you'd already told us about. Yeah,
right, exactly. And it was just like, you made it so much easier because that message came from us. So the repeatability is, get with marketing, get your messaging down, understand what customers are going to like and what they're going to miss out on, and set that expectation up front so you're working on the companies that you should be winning.
And so we've got the trigger, we've got making it repeatable. The next piece of this is making sure it's improvable. And so if you had to go and pitch that same e-commerce company again, and you wanted to do an even better job, which I know might be tough because this was like the first big, we accomplished the impossible, Sean. How could it get better? Well, you and I know that great sales teams are always looking at how they improve their processes. So how would you coach sales teams to make sure that something like that was done even better next time?
You know what? I actually, because I would actually argue that one of the things that we should be doing, and again, it was a leadership fault of many companies, is when we lose deals, a lot of times it's like, oh, you got outsold. And so reps become afraid to actually share what happened. They become afraid to actually claim a deal is lost. So all of a sudden the CRM, hey, the close date just moved out 6 months.
Right. Yeah.
What happened? No, it's a suspect. Right. And so I think as organizations, we need to embrace losses and celebrate them. All right. Celebrate your losses. It was something that we started doing that, like during our Friday meetings, like we'd just be like, all right, who lost a deal today? And like somebody saying like, yeah, all right. Like we congratulate them and go, all right, like because they're already like their wallet hurts, their pipeline hurts, their quota attainment hurts. They're already punished, right? Let's go. Like, what did we learn from it? What messaging didn't resonate? Like, what did the competitors do? And like, take all of those lessons, and you're continually refining that message and improving it, understanding from your losses. And then if it took too long to lose, like, what could we have heard earlier in that process?
Right.
What could we have unveiled earlier that would help them make that decision? That's where the improvement takes place, is celebrating the losses instead of putting somebody on a table and throwing rock at them like some
Yeah.
companies I see do.
Yeah, and a great way we've seen that done actually is requiring salespeople to bring challenges to the table each and every week. And the first challenge to bring is, if you lost a deal, let's talk about why.
Yeah.
Because maybe we solved that problem a long time ago and you missed the memo. In which case, great, go learn, and do differently next time. But maybe you lost a deal because of something that we didn't even know existed. That competitor had that thing that we haven't even, mapped out yet. Wouldn't that be a valuable thing to know now, rather than just have that salespeople move the close date down the line? And so I love the fact, you're all about embracing losses. We are as well. So the final M in this acronym is making sure that this thing is measurable. So how do we know if this thing is even working, so that we know to make it better, or if it's even being used? Because you and I might coach a sales team to go be more transparent. Well, how do we measure that and make sure that they're actually doing what it is their leadership is telling them to do?
Yeah, I think we've teased that out a little bit, but it starts with looking at cycle lengths. I mean, you're going to see that. I talk to companies that are just like, hey, our sales cycle is 8 months long, and it's just going to be 8 months long. I'm like, all right, that's cool. And you might be right, but let's look at and go, why does it take your buyers 8 months to trigger a decision, to build the proper consensus, to be able to predict what their experience is going to be like using your product services? Like, why does it take 8 months? It doesn't. Let's get that out first. And then when we start to embrace these things, you're going to start seeing an acceleration. So that's number one. Number two is your win rates. Right? But if you're only winning 25% of your deal, there's something going on in that initial qualification. And so let's look at that and see, hey, can we get that win rate to go up as a result of better qualifying in or out deals faster? Those were the two that were like overnight, where we started to see. Now, transparency, remember that piece that I talked about around, it's not only about embracing your flaws and leading with them and helping the customer predict, but I did mention leading with pricing. Now, that a lot old school is just like, we've got to build enough value before we show price, right? Well, that's kind of like, our brains can't process, again, the value of the juice until we understand what the squeeze. We need to set that expectation. But there's also a way that we can, what I call transparent negotiate. And what that means is, it always hurt me I always thought it was weird that most negotiation classes in sales have been taught by former FBI hostage negotiators.
Sure. Yeah. Like, it's life and death. You're going to die if we don't get this done. Yeah.
Like, we're not negotiating the release of hostages from a bank heist. And in most cases, we're going to have to sell to these people again, right? We're not going to take them and put them in jail after we get these, right? Like, And so I had stumbled on this idea of transparent negotiating, which is basically, set the range early. Go, hey, we're going to have to get to know each other. But before we get too deep, this is customers like yours. This is about where you're going to pay. Are we close? And get that expectation set first. But then even during the pricing discussions, to be able to lay out for the customer what matters to you in your pricing. So as an organization, our pricing is based on 4 things. How much you buy, so the volume. Like, the more you buy, the better it is for us, right? Timing of cash. Turns out we like money. Pay us faster. That's good for us. Length of commitment. The longer you commit to our products, technology, services, better for us. And then number 4 is the timing of the transaction, meaning there's value for us to be able to forecast, to be able to resource. And so if we can mutually align around that, there's value in it. When they ask for a discount, instead of you Tommy boy, okie dokie, or starting to go into this lying game of like, did his eye twitch? Like, is he rubbing his chin? That's a sign that he's lying. Like, stop it, right? Instead, you say, hey, remember those 4 things we talked about? We might have a way to help you get there. Commit to more, pay faster, commit longer, help me forecast. When we do that, we end up collaborating on our deals. They become more valuable. And so I've seen customers who embrace transparent negotiating, seeing discounting percentages go down dramatically and their deal forecast becoming more accurate almost overnight. So there's a bunch of
by being honest, there's no part of our sales cycle that wouldn't be effective. Like it's across the board. Anything that you're measuring is going to get better by doing these things. And that's
should.
why it's so awesome to have the neuroscience of sales. We talk about the science of sales, but let's go a level deeper. They get the neuroscience. That's what I love about it.
That's
so
why,
Todd, to make sure that people can actually, get out there and continue to use what we're teaching, because you and I can talk all day, man.
Yes.
And I totally get it. You're going to have you back on the show for sure. How do people find out more about you? Where do they find the transparency sale? Where do they find out about your next project? How do they get connected into Todd's world?
Oh man. So yeah, like you joked about, I'm hard not to find right now, almost annoyingly. But transparencysale.com, I've got a bunch of free, like I just publish articles and videos and just go there and hang out. I've got a blog on there. The book is available anywhere books are sold. And I recorded the audiobook myself on Audible. But the Kindle, there's a hard copy, there's a paperback. You can find it just about anywhere you can buy books. So then I've done a bunch of podcast interviews. So do a quick Spotify search if you want to nerd out even more.
Love it. Love it. Well, please make sure that you are following Todd. I do. I always learn something from him. And then for us here at Bulletproof Selling, of course, make sure you're following us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube for these live streams. And of course, check out our podcast, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, anywhere podcasts can be found. So for more sales processes, more systems, more stuff to help improve your pipeline flow, to help you replace hope with certainty, make sure you're checking us out for weekly resources that are released over at bulletproof-selling.com. So Sean Rhodes here. It's been a pleasure serving you alongside Todd Caponi. Todd, let's go out there and let's make selling bulletproof.
There you go. Thanks for having me.